Hey YouTube, today I'm going to be making a new video similar to the last one I just did on Winter Wyvern and how to play Winter Wyvern at a high level. Today I'm going to be doing Undying, one of my other favorite heroes. So this will be an interesting comparison because Winter Wyvern as a 5 is very defensive. If you watch that video, I talked about how you want to stay in your lane as long as possible. Undying is kind of the exact opposite, so maybe it's a little interesting that I like both of these heroes, but I think they do both have very clear playstyles. They're just very different playstyles. So I'm going to show you this game, what concepts you really need to understand on Undying, and what you need to do on this hero to play the hero to its maximum potential and have the most impact in your games. So in the lane here, this lane does not go particularly well. I don't think this is a bad lane matchup per se. But my Weaver kind of played it weird. He started with a stick against Bounty Hunter Viper, and he just kind of wasted a lot of his gold, and we couldn't really utilize our ability to kind of chase this Viper out of lane. So nothing really notable happens. I play pretty passive. I kind of just play a little for pulls and spamming decay, and at one point my Weaver goes mid to take some farm here. And I'm only level 3 at this point, so I can't do anything. And the first concept that I'm going to talk about of what Undying does as a hero is he breaks down the lanes. It's kind of a cool job, but your job as Undying is you basically decide when the laning phase ends because you leave your lane and you show up in the enemy carry's lane and you're like, what up, dude? You gotta leave. That's what I think Undying does best. So I stick around here quite a while, just kind of getting XP, kind of looking for an opportunity to go bottom, understanding that I'm not really helping this Weaver do anything besides heal him. And so here's where I make my rotation. This is 8:45 in the game. This can happen at various times. If our lane had been going better, it probably could have happened earlier than this. Given that it didn't go very well, it's happening now. What keys in on this rotation and what makes it good is, or when you do it versus when you don't do it, is you do it when you are looking to react to a play that the enemy's making on your offlane, there's a fight breaking out and you can show up and turn it with a tombstone, or when your team's looking strong and they're pushed up, and if you can TP in and walk down and position yourself to be ready to make an aggressive play under the tower or something. Those are the two opportunities you look for. Both of them kind of revolve around Tombstone being up. So you should never look to make this rotation if your Tombstone's on cooldown from your own lane for whatever reason. So I'll start to slow it down here. And, you can see that, I show up, throw my Tombstone down, throw my spells out. It works pretty well. I do end up dying here, but this overall is a good rotation. And look at what this does. This forces their Viper, who was having a great lane, to come bottom. If I was this Viper, I never would have done what this guy did because I don't like leaving free lanes. If I'm Viper, I'm free farming top and pushing the tower, but this is what your rotation will do. So even if your top lane is going bad, you coming bottom will sometimes just force either the position 4 or even the position 3 to come down here. And now if this Weaver wants to, he can go back to his lane and it'll be a free lane for a really long time because Viper can't be there. So this concept of breaking down the lanes is the first thing that Undying does that you really need to do to maximize the potential as a hero. And your playstyle this phase in the game, I just kind of love how this hero works. It's literally just do the same thing over and over again of play with your strong core and just run down the enemy safe lane. And you basically just run into them over and over. If for whatever reason you're way behind and this doesn't work, then this hero's just not very good. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you. I don't have really sage advice for what to do if you running into them just leaves your whole team feeding over and over. Try and do better in your lanes. Maybe you missed your timing to break down the lanes. Maybe you tried to do it too early. If you can look to adjust that timing, you might be able to have a higher impact. So you can see that I will just position down here behind this LC, and if anybody comes down here, I'm happy to fight them. That's what Undying wants. The only times where you're not doing this, like where I went mid and just kind of chilled for just a second, is when you're waiting for Tombstone to come back off cooldown, or you're waiting for like your playmaking core, whoever it is, to like, or if they're like farming an item or they're like close to a level that they need. In those cases where your playmaking core doesn't want to do anything, those are when like you can like look to do something else, which is usually kind of just like soak mid. And so fights in this area of the map you're going to see in this game are exactly what Undying wants. If you're taking fights not here, you're just playing the hero wrong. Like, you should not be like running around top in your own safe lane jungle. I mean, that's just not what the hero does. So like, even though this engagement, you know, we trade 1-for-1 support, this is like what I want to be doing. This is what makes space for my Weaver, for whoever your mid is. It's kind of what you want to do. Undying is best in side lanes. So when you break down the lanes, you want to go to the opposite side lane of where you are. Like I play Undying as the 5 usually. You want to go down to the enemy safe lane and fight there. The hero does very well in these longer lanes where like you have more room to chase them down and Tombstone has more time to take effect. He's really not a good mid lane like ganker or fighter. It's too close to the enemy tower, and it just doesn't work out that well. So you're gonna note that like some of these fights that happen in the next couple of minutes, like I smoke here and I want to run into the enemy jungle. We run straight into them and end up fighting in the river, and these are kind of awkward fights for Undying, just positionally. He just does well when the fights like spread out a little bit more and there's like more room to like run around. So conceptually, you want to look to fight, you know, enemy jungle along the enemy safe lane. These are the kind of fights you really want to take. Another key concept of Undying that is really important is itemization. Like, I talked about it in the Winter Wyvern video, right? I think itemization is hard. I think it's hard to do it right. But to really play Undying at a high level, I think requires like a really good understanding of like the items that you want to go for. And this hero's got a lot of options. Holy Locket is good. Solar Crest is good. It's not quite as good as it used to be, but it's still good. Lotus is really good. Don't go Ags. If you go Ags on +5 and you're dying, you're basically grieving. Force Staff can be good. Drums can be really good. Vlad's can be good. Ghost Scepter, Glimmer, Mech into Greaves. All of these items I think are viable, and I get them all at various times. And understanding like what you need for the game, making sure that you're like not dying before you get your spells off, and like if you're not, you can go these more amp up items like Drums, Vlad's. Holy Locket can help as well if your team needs a little more sustain. And then if you need to like survive, maybe you need a quick Ghost Scepter or a Force Staff or a Glimmer. So you just kind of have to read the game and what's happening. So this game, I had Force Staff queued up. I had Mana Boots Force Staff queued up. And I ended up getting Tranquils mostly because I picked up this Arcane Ring. I really like Arcanes on this hero, but if you can run around with Infused Raindrops, which I think are must buy on this hero, like every game, so buy Raindrops. If you can run around with Raindrops and like an Arcane Ring, if you get lucky, or even like a Keen Optic, you kind of get by okay, and you can go for these Tranquil Boots, which are really nice just for the sustain, and to maybe eventually upgrade into Boots of Bearing. I don't get it this game. I go for other items instead of just straight upgrading the drums that I get next, but you really like Tranquils as well if you can mana sustain in some other way. You have to buy one on this hero. It's just a no-brainer, hopefully. This Fluffy Hat ends up staying casual. I don't actually ever go back for the Force Staff. But yeah, my next choice is Drums, because the way this game's playing out is it's like Elsie and Wind Ranger, and eventually my Weaver, they're just going to be focusing heroes down with right clicks, and Drums just amps everything about that. So it really just feeds into the way Undying wants to play, and if it works for your cores, it's a really good item to get. You want to get Drums in almost every scenario. So notice I'm still just playing here behind my LC, and I mean, I'm sort of in front of him at this point. He's pushing the lane, but in this area, around my playmaking core, and we end up getting a really good fight here. I die, but we trade like freaking 4 for 1 here. So these are the fights that you want to be taking, and in this part of the map. This is just classic Undying playing the right part of the map, and when you come down here, you need your team to come down here with you. So like high level Dota, it's a lot easier to do that. If you're lower level, all you can do is ask your teammates, right? And like I said, maybe they need an item soon, and like maybe you need to wait a minute, but like if nobody needs an item and you guys are kind of ready to go, this is what you want to do. You know, if you need to, buy smokes. Otherwise, see how much vision that we've placed down here. It's just really what you want to be doing, and you want to ward and play accordingly. One of the other high-level concepts on Undying is positioning in fights. This hero is interesting because he's a melee hero. And in the lane, you want to take advantage and bully and like be kind of the frontline tank for your, you know, maybe ranged core. That's a lot of the times how it works. But transitioning into the mid game, you're not really a frontliner. You're kind of like a backline spellcaster, kind of like Ogre, and what you need to do is you need to be close enough to cast your spells, which are like cooldown or Tombstone and Decay are pretty short cast range. Soul Rip's decent. So you want to be kind of in the middle of like where your team is. You don't want to be in the front line, but you're also not like a ranged hero backliner like Winter Wyvern, for example. So you don't want to be way in the back either. I find Undying plays best in team fights kind of in the center of the action. So you'll see there's at least one good example that I can show you later on, but that's kind of what you should be looking to do. You can sort of just start some fights like that last one in their bottom jungle by dropping Tomb and running in first. And a lot of times that like can bait good fights, and in those circumstances, usually you like end up dying, but as long as you get all your spells off, it'll usually go pretty good. And then in other circumstances, you need to wait for your playmaking core to initiate, and you need to kind of be close to right behind them to like follow up with damage on Soul Rip, dropping the Tombstone, getting a Decay off. And here's where I'll talk a little bit about his abilities, right? Decay, leave at level 1. You just don't need more points in it as a support. Soul Rip and Tombstone are obviously this hero's bread and butter. I always am 144. Just no exceptions. If you notice this game, I kind of got 3 points in Soul Rip. It's because we weren't being very aggressive in the top lane, and I was just spam healing my Weaver. That's why I just maxed Soul... Not maxed, but got multiple points in it first. But then I went back, and at one point I was 133, and I had 3 points in the tomb. That was level 7. I skipped my ult. Your ult kind of sucks early. Like, do not level this early. I almost always get this at, like, level 10 or 11. Here, I think I only picked it up because, like, right when I leveled up, I wanted to, like, use it. But usually I pick up the level 10 Tombstone cooldown talent first, and then at, like, 11, I'll go back for the Flesh Golem. 12, I'll get the second point in Flesh Golem. But it's not something that you need to prioritize using, especially early on. Like, don't overplay into this Flesh Golem and get out of position. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying, like, as the game goes a little bit later, and notice the fights around the river, again, are just kind of awkward. Like, you don't really want to be fighting here. It, like, kind of worked out here, but you just don't have great vision. One thing I'll note about Tombstone, it's got, like, 1800 flying vision at night. So if I were to put this up here, it's literally like a ward. Like, the Tombstone itself just gives massive vision. It's like a ward, if you didn't know. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, if you're playing the center of the fight, usually there will be, like, a hero or two, like, near you to hit. And that's when, like, Flesh Golem can be kind of okay. And I'll point that out in a fight later, but don't play too much into Flesh Golem, especially early. It's just not what your hero does. I know it's what the ability does, but it's just not what your hero wants to do. Notice here I'm circling on the minimap. Guys, can we go play bottom, please? That's where our wards are. That's where Undying wants to play. And we do. My Wind Ranger gets a nice pick off on their mid. This guy's like super farmed. And we just keep playing bottom. Notice I've spent 0 time hitting jungle camps, almost 0 time hitting creeps. It's just not what your hero does. That makes Undying not a great pick for low-level Dota, because in low-level Dota, you really need to pick heroes that clear waves. Heroes that don't clear waves are just not very good at low MMRs, so if you want to pick Undying, maybe at level 10, go for the Decay damage talent, and maybe you can sneak an extra point in Decay, and you kind of clear waves okay with like the talent and Decay. You actually clear them really well once it's like Decay's maxing up the talent. So in lower level MMRs, you can kind of get away with that since the game's slower anyways. Maybe you don't need the cooldown as often. But, you know, I'm trying to explain like how you play these heroes at a high level, right? Like if you're Ancient, Divine, low Immortal even, looking to like make your way up. This is kind of how you want to be playing the hero to its maximum effect, and hopefully your cores are like farming enough to like kind of make up for the fact that you're not clearing waves, right? I have 16 CS in 21 minutes. I am not hitting a lot of creeps. these types of fights right here happen a lot, where even if your core dies, you kind of like bait a fight onto a tombstone, and you can bait the enemy out of position. So that's what happens here. We start the fight by losing our LC, and my tombstone dies, right? So I don't... This is a fight without a tomb and without a core, and we still end up winning because of the positioning they were in. My Wind Rangers get a... It basically is able to get a key pick off on their core. And notice here my positioning in this fight is kind of in the middle. I'm healing myself because I think I'm going to die, otherwise I'd be healing my cores. And I get like 1 or 2 right clicks off with Flesh Golem, but that's really it. And I'm still spamming heal on myself because I'm worried that if he slights me, I'll die. But just notice how well this fight went, just based off how that tombstone started. And general spell usage on Soul Rip is like, in the beginning of fights, you want to be using it on whatever core of yours is like losing the most HP to start the fight. Unless they're initiating on you or something, then of course use it on yourself. And then as the fight continues, a lot of times you're just using it on whoever is like most at threat of dying. A lot of times it'll be yourself if you're even alive towards the end of a team fight, and you know, sometimes it will be like another core if it's going really well. So hopefully that's not too complicated. His abilities are not what I think stops most people from like playing this hero well. His abilities are pretty simple. So notice again how when we look to make an aggressive play, it's still towards the bottom part of the map. And it's really just rinse and repeat. I think what a lot of lower level players don't understand is that you can do the same thing over and over. Like, if this is how your heroes want to play, then you need to play into that. Like, don't try it once, and like, even if it doesn't work, like, you kind of still need to do it again. Like, for us, it's worked out for the most part, but like, see, even though it worked, and we did it once, like, you still want to do the same thing again. And this is kind of playing towards, like, you know, playing towards the vision that you have down. You know, maybe you could argue here we should be playing for the Roshan instead of bottom again, but it really like is good to like play on your wards and just play the part of the maps that your hero likes to play. Since we're a pick-off lineup, we like look for pick-offs. And my next item here, I go for the Medallion. I kind of had Vlad's queued up, but I was debating between Vlad's and Medallion. I thought both were really good. I ended up going for the Medallion because I thought we would do Roshan soon, and also, like, just based on how our pickoff works, it's like single target physical. I was like, Medallion on whoever we're trying to burst just makes it happen even faster. And I wasn't dying in these fights, if you notice. I'm like not getting focused, and you know, I don't need like a glimmer or a force to like kind of survive these fights. So Medallion I thought was like a pretty good pickup here. This is the fight I wanted to talk about in terms of positioning. So I'm dead center of this fight, and this is kind of exactly what you want to do. I got my tombstone down, it's over on the side, and as soon as I get unchronoed, or chrono wears off, pop my drums, pop all my abilities, pop all my spells, throw down my Medallion, and, you know, I use my ult, but I don't really get any hits off. I got 1 hit off, there we go. That's kind of how you want to be positioned on Undying. Not up front, getting picked off first, not too far back, because then you're really just not close enough to get off a good tomb and some decays. Just kind of right in the middle is where you want to be. And you can see that we're going to back to Roche here, and then we'll kind of see how this like Medallion Solar Crest goes into effect. When you're going high ground, it can be really good to lay down a tombstone, kind of like a Monkey King ult. I didn't do it there because it came off right as we were backing out anyways. Pretty crazy fight where the enemy just kind of throws and walks into us while we're retreating, even though we still had all of our abilities. You can see my items getting a lot of value here, though. The drums are playing well. Medallion's decent. You know, you could argue I would have lived there if I had a defensive item, but, you know, sometimes it's better to amp the aggressive potential and die. You know, a lot of what this hero does is, like, can kind of, like, die, but as long as you get all your spells off, you'll still win fights. There are a couple different supports that play like this. Kind of like Ogre. Undying's a big one, I guess. Get off your spells, die, and the fight will, like, go well. So yeah, here I finished the Solar, kind of like buy into this concept, and then I do go for the Vlad's next. Here's the last fight I'll talk about. Notice again, I'm like right in the center. I don't know why my Rubik's in front, but you know, if you can imagine, LC was there. Basically the center of the fight. And the fight like kind of happens around my tombstone. I throw down a heal on my tombstone, I think. No, I don't even need to because they're not even attacking it anymore. So, just play the center of the fight and get all your spells off. And use all your items on Undying, and good things will happen. It's not too advanced. The main concepts that I talked about, like I said, I don't think the hard part of Undying is like casting his spells. I think the hard part is getting the items right, playing the right part of the map, and then kind of breaking down the lanes at the right time. And that's where I think a lot of Undying players go wrong. So I will wrap up the video here. Actually, there's not too much left to discuss. We just go high ground, win a couple more good fights. I get the Vlads, like I said. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions on anything I talked about in this video. Hopefully this will conceptually help you understand the hero and give you like a good game plan in your games. You try this hero out, and if you play him successfully, this hero is so much fun because you're just constantly running at the enemies, using all your abilities, and like for the most part killing them if the game's going well. So a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.